In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, welcome to another session of Finding God. We are on part two of Surah As-Safat, those ranged in ranks, and we'll be continuing on this journey for the next couple of weeks because it's a longer one, and I just do 30 or 30 odd verses every week. So today we're going to be carrying on further from what we covered last week about the infidels and the right and the wrong, and just a nice recap of the day of judgment and resurrection and people of Mecca and so on and so forth. That's what we'll start with. Um, yeah. So I think I'll start with verse 41 today and go up till verse 73. And after 73, we start with the stories of Noah, Abraham, Moses, Aaron, Elias, Lot, and Jonas. And I don't want to divide them. My goal would be to try to cover all, if not most, of those stories in one go. Or maybe I'll cover Noah, Abraham, and Moses, and then I'll do the rest the next week, something along those lines. Because this is one of my favorite parts of reading the Quran and translating it. That's what I enjoy most. So, we stopped at verse 40 last week, and I will continue from there on. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, save the chosen slaves of God, which are the true believers of Islam. And that's what it says. For them there will be a known provision in paradise, fruits, and they shall be honored in the gardens of delight, facing one another on thrones. Now, this imagery is something that has been repeated multiple times. You'll be sitting on thrones and you'll be facing each other. Now, I always make the argument that the Quran can be taken literally, but also figuratively. So you can obviously imagine that everybody is sitting on a throne and looking at somebody else sitting on a throne and throne and throne. Or it could be a metaphor for something else, that you will be so venerated and revered and respected in that zone. It could be that too. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm sitting on a gold throne looking at somebody else sitting on a gold throne. Obviously, it can also be that. I'm not saying it can't, but the argument that I always make is that the Quran can also be something figurative. So I look at it in those two dimensions. Round them will be passed a cup of pure wine, white, delicious to the drinkers. Interesting. So if you are uninitiated in Islam or in any of the religions, alcohol is forbidden. Muslims can't drink alcohol. They don't even touch the bottle. Forbidden. And there are multiple reasons for that throughout the Quran. But the central reason is loss of control. Here it is being said that they'll be sitting on those thrones and a cup of wine will be passed. White, delicious to the drinkers. That's very interesting. What's interesting is that white wine is considered delicious, whereas some people prefer red. But also, the bigger question here is, why is that something that is considered delicious? And why is it forbidden on the earth today? Well, it's forbidden because we lose control, and when we're there, we may not lose control. That could be one argument. Or the faculties which govern us, which suffer under loss of control, may not be functioning then. That's a difficult, wordy way of saying we may not be fully based on our senses. We may be just a spirit, or we may be in a condition where alcohol doesn't really affect us and it's delicious. Or wine could refer to something that is grown in a vineyard or comes from grape and maybe doesn't have the alcoholic component. It could be both. Neither will they have ghul, any kind of hurt, abdominal pain, headache, sin from that, nor will they suffer intoxication therefrom. See, exactly. It wouldn't affect them, and it wouldn't hurt their stomach. I don't know if wine affects your stomach or your throat, but If it does, this wine will not. And besides them will be kasirat al-tarf, chaste female wives, restraining their glances, desiring none except their husbands, with wide and beautiful eyes. Oh, interesting. I want to cover a huge section of this chapter. Not huge, maybe 30 odd verses. I'm not going to spend an inordinate amount of time on this one verse, but it has to be said. First, let me see the Arabic. So, the critics of Islam, the apostates, the atheists, and the critics, they always say that Muslims are being sold this ideology by selling them this chaste female wives, females, plural, restraining their glances, desiring none except their husbands. If I can look at the next verse. Yep. No mention of what is available for women. Now, I've touched upon this subject matter slightly before, and I've also stated that I'm reading it pure as the book, not as the larger knowledge, but purely a rationalist reading of the book. But I have some knowledge on this topic, some. And the hur or huriya, as it's written in English, is not gender specific, to be exact. It's gender is a very physical construct as far as we're concerned. I'm not sure if we have male and female spirits. We haven't really unpacked that. But the idea isn't, oh, men will have all these women who are chaste virgins and women will have nothing. No, that's not the idea. The idea is whatever you desire is there for you. And speaking to an Arab living in the 6th century in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, where temperatures go up to 50 degrees Celsius, maybe it was slightly lower at that time, but they climb up high, selling them the idea of grapes and milk and honey and watermelon and pistachios and all those things is the right idea. If you try to sell them, oh, there will be a lot of heat and warmth, they're like, no, I already have that. That doesn't appeal to me. Essentially, what I think is that heaven has everything. So that wine is certainly there, but it probably has every other thing known and unknown to us. And these chaste females, or for the women, some sort of an equivalent. Because in Islam, we don't do this, that women are useless and men are everything. We don't, that's not the belief. There's a difference in men and women, but it's never, this disparity does not exist. Just look at how much we honor the mother or the Prophet's first wife and so forth. So I have to address this point clearly, that chaste female wives is written in bracket. Qasirat at-tarf, if I could. Qasirat at-tarf. Such as restrain their gaze, which refers to both male and female. See, exactly. There's a Muslim Villa has this whole section, reward of women in paradise. Commentaries, exactly, yeah. There's so much discussed on this. So please, if this concerns you or bothers you, feel free to look into this. Because I assure you that Islam doesn't play this game of, oh, men will rejoice and women will nothing. No, it doesn't play that game at all. So that is something that you're selling to the people. Oh, this wine will be available to you, and you will all sit on thrones, and all these wonderful members of the opposite sex will be available for you. So that's what's being sold. Delicate and pure, as if they were hidden eggs, well preserved. Interesting use of the term eggs. Then they will turn to one another, mutually questioning. A speaker of them will say, "Verily, I had a companion in the world who used to say, 'Are you among those who believe in resurrection after death? That when we die and become dust and bones, shall we indeed be raised up to receive reward or punishment according to our deeds?'" The speaker said, "Will you look down?" Well, this is interesting imagery. So he looked down and saw him in the midst of the fire. He said, "By God, you have nearly ruined me. Had it not been for the grace of my Lord, I would certainly have been among those brought forth to hell." The dwellers of paradise will say, "Are we then not to die anymore, except our first death, and we shall not be punished after we have entered paradise?" Truly, this is supreme success. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to go back up a bit because this was all covered just a bit quickly. So the maidens or the members of the opposite sex, delicate and pure, as if hidden eggs, then they will turn to one another, mutually questioning. I don't know who will turn to the other. Will it be the people sitting on the thrones, or will it be the chaste females? My instinct is saying that it will be the people, not the chaste females or the chaste members of the opposite sex. That's what the instinct is saying. Because that way the translation makes more sense. So one of them will say, "I had a companion in the world who used to say, 'Are you among those who believe in resurrection after death? That when we die and become dust and bones, shall we indeed be raised up to receive reward or punishment according to our deeds?'" The speaker would say, "Will you look down?" So he looked down and saw, that's interesting, and saw him in the midst of the fire. He said, "By God, you have nearly ruined me." It's the writing, it's just a bit tricky. I'm not fully satisfied by the way it's written. I wish I could just to try this out. I want to look at other verses at Quran.com is the website that I use. So what is it? Verse 54. Inquisitively, yes, exactly. Okay, right. Yes. Yeah. Maidens of modest gaze and gorgeous eyes. Okay. I've already made the argument. As if they were pristine pearls or spotless eggs. Yes, thank you. It is assumed that they will ask each other about their lives in the world. So the people on the thrones. Thank you. One of them will say, "I once had a companion in the world who used to ask me, do you actually believe in resurrection?" So that part isn't covered in this, is it? Are you among those who believe in resurrection? It doesn't. The word doesn't indicate the tonality that, "Oh, do you really believe in resurrection? When we are dead and reduced to dust and bones, will we really be brought to judgment?" He will then ask, "Would you care to see his fate?" Then he and the others will look and spot him in the midst of the hellfire. He will then say, "By God, you nearly ruined me." Yeah, exactly. So see, there's a bit of in the translation. That's why I stopped, because the writing is a bit unclear, or if not unclear, it requires patience, because otherwise, if you jump verse to verse, it sometimes flies by too quickly. And then he says, "By God, you have nearly ruined me. Had it not been for the grace of my Lord, I would certainly have been among those brought forth to hell." The dwellers of paradise will say, "Are we then not to die anymore, except our first death, and we shall not be punished after we have entered paradise?" Truly, this is supreme success. For the like of this let the workers work. Is that paradise better entertainment, or the tree of Zaqum, a horrible tree in hell? We have seen and heard of this tree before in previous chapters where Zaqum was being discussed. And if you Google it, you can find images of it. Like people have drawn, oh, that's what it looks like. It's dark and it's coming from hell and it's this size, and it's nothing positive. Is that paradise better entertainment, or the tree of Zaqum? The contrast is being made elaborate for a reason. We're being told, look, this is one and this is the other. Truly, we have made it as a trail for the Zalimun, the polytheists, disbelieve, wrongdoer. Verily, it is a tree that springs out of the bottom of hellfire. The shoots of its fruit stalks are like the head of Shayateen, the devils. Oof. Truly they will eat thereof and fill their bellies therewith. Then on the top of that they will be given boiling water to drink, so that so that it becomes a mixture of boiling water and Zaqum in their bellies. Ugh. So they'll eat from that tree, and then they'll drink hot boiling water on top of it. Then thereafter, verily, their return is to the flaming fire of hell. It's a bit heavy. It's really heavy. Verily, they found their fathers on the wrong path, so they too hastened in their footsteps. And indeed, most of the men of old went astray before them. And indeed, we sent among them warners and messengers. Then see what was the end of those who were warned but heeded not. I'll go up till 74. Except the chosen slaves of God, faithful, obedient, and true believers of God. What do these last 5 verses mean? So they hastened. So the men of old went astray, and we sent them warners or messengers. And what happened to those who were warned but they didn't listen? And then except the chosen slaves of God. I will stop here because then it starts about Noah and Abraham, and then it goes on to Moses and Aaron and Elias and Jonas, and so it starts going into their stories. It just so happens that today's session is slightly shorter. Is this something I can take a deep dive into further? No, there isn't. Now, I don't want to start Noah's story. That just doesn't make sense to me if I start it right now. It's being repeated again and again, right? This idea that this is the end and this is resurrection and this is hell and these are the good and these are the bad. And it's around 615 AD, 616, around that time, where a couple of years have certainly passed with Prophet Muhammad preaching the message of Islam. And here the message is being repeated. There are a lot of chapters which repeat the message and then add something on top of it. Like, it's iterative. And if anybody knows anything about iteration, it's never the same. It repeats, but it's slightly different, which I say about the day and the night. Every day that follows the night is slightly different from the day previous. We're slightly far in a different position vis-a-vis the sun, the North Star, other stars and other planets. Every moment is different. And I wonder how often we have this exact same position of the Earth, the Sun, the Moon, and the other planets. I wonder. And this is just one tiny solar system in a vast expanse of many others. So that's iterative. Every time it's slightly different. Even the same day, the next year is slightly different, if not marginally different. So it's iterative. How the message is being repeated and drilled into people. Same idea over and over and over and over again. So whenever you ask somebody what is Zaqum, they'll tell you, well, it's a tree in hell, and it seems like it comes out of the bottom of the hellfire, and its fruit is something that the residents of hell eat from and follow it with boiling water, and it's this and that. And then they say, well, what happens to the believers? Well, they sit on thrones and they drink this delicious wine, and they are surrounded by members of the opposite sex. That's the term I use, who are only focused on them and are chaste and clean and so forth. And the contrast is being made clear and evident. It's so interesting. One group is being given fruit or the produce of a horrible tree. Not all trees are wonderful. If you think all trees are wonderful, perhaps you should travel a bit more. Some trees are horrendous, even in the skin and the structure and the fruit that they produce and the leaves. They are quite tough. And some are wonderful, like human beings. So what is that tree and that fruit? And you follow it with boiling water, and the imagery is so clear. Like God could have said something along the lines of, well, no, it's an artificially intelligent piece of blockchain technology which you will consume through your nostril because your Neuralink will tie up into it. No. He has to explain it to the people at their own level. So everybody knows what a tree is. Even in Mecca, everybody knows what a tree is. And they know what boiling water feels like. They obviously know this. So that has been put together. And then pre-Islam, and even at the same time as Islam, they know what white wine tastes like, what a throne looks like, what a beautiful member of the opposite sex looks like, why they value chastity, why they value, desiring glances only for me and for no one else. Why is that of value? They understand all of that. That is the language in which they're being taught and iteratively drilled into. The same message is being told to them so that there is no doubt with regards to where Islam or where Muhammad stands with regards to the people, the future, the past, and so forth. It's incredibly important. I will stop here. I will take your leave here. It is Friday, the 8th, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead, a wonderful Friday, and a wonderful week. And I shall see you next week with part 3 of Surah As-Safat, where we start talking about Noah and Abraham and Moses, Aaron, and then Elias, John after that.